Welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host, Ohio Divided. Here we dive into all things sports. Ohio State, Michigan, the Bengals, the Browns, the Reds, college football, the NFL, college hoops, Major League Baseball. And hey, we might even dip into a little NBA when things get spicy. If it's happening in the sports world, we're talking about it right here on the Middle Ground. Before we get rolling, make sure you please like, subscribe, follow, retweet, do all the things that help this show grow. We appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get to the show. Welcome in, everybody. It is Monday, January 26th, and we are back. Got a new cord for my mic and my headphones. I don't know what was happening. It was probably about 2 weeks ago. I had an episode where I think it was the one with Danny Boy Kane and T-Cal and those guys that talk about the Miami and Indiana National Championship. But I started to have some issues during that, and I think I found out why my audio was so bad that day. It was so quiet. I think my cord that goes into like my control box of where my microphone and my headphones plug into wasn't getting enough power anymore to the control board. So I talked to Metal, like I've said plenty of times on here. I don't know anything about IT. I am the dumbest person ever when it comes to trying to fix any kind of computer, technical, IT, whatever type of issue. And he said, try to get a new cord, see if that works. So that's what I did. Flip side of that, I'm also trying a little bit something different here. It is actually very, very, very early here on Monday morning, the 26th. I think I'm going to try to like record these episodes and then basically take the recording and just stream them live. So I'm hoping that gets a little bit better connection, or the quality of just listening to everything is a little bit clearer. I've noticed when I listen to the episode on Spotify or YouTube after it's been uploaded, or I take the file after it's been uploaded, it typically sounds a little bit better than what it sounds like on Twitter at times. So just trying to maybe see if that approach works and if we can get a little bit better quality sound. Before we get into everything, hopefully everybody was able to survive the blizzard of 2026 that came across this past week. I know in my area, I mean, it was bad. I'm on the west side of Ohio. We probably got about 10 inches or so. A lot of snow, but I think the further south that you got, the worse it got. Not that Columbus is south by any means, but I did see there were clips of like 8 to 12 inches of snow in freeways in Columbus. I saw Cincinnati area look like it was well above a foot of snow, and from what I've seen on social media, it looks like Nashville got the brunt of it, and it looks a lot like it was ice that hit them more than anything. I remember the ice storm that we had here in Ohio probably about 20 years ago. I think somebody said on Twitter it was about 2005 when that hit, and I just remember all the trees being completely covered with ice. A lot of branches fell and everything, and at least the video that I saw looked much, much, much worse than what we had here in Ohio back in 2005. It honestly looked like a crime scene and looked like a bomb went off. So hopefully everybody can stay safe, stay warm. I know it's supposed to get pretty cold here the next few days, so stay safe, stay warm. Take care of loved ones. So, whole point of this episode, we're going to get into the Art Smith hire. I am giving it a 7.5 out of 10. After I've had time to kind of digest everything, look at his past, kind of consider everything as we go forward to him being Ohio State's new offensive coordinator, I am giving it a 7.5 out of 10. So, I want to start from the beginning here. When I first initially saw the report come out, my mind was kind of like, okay. I know he sucked with the Falcons, and I know he sucked with the Steelers. But the one thing I didn't want Ohio State to do was just promote Tyler Bowen and Keenan Bailey from within. That would have been the worst decision Ryan Day could have possibly have made. We all would have known how that would have ended. Ryan Day ultimately would have done everything in terms of the game plan, in terms of the play calling. He would not have given them any kind of trust to take whatever offensive prep, whatever offensive game planning it was, whatever offensive play calling it was off of Ryan Day's plate so he can go be a CEO. Because the 1 year we did get to see him be a CEO in 2024, they won a national championship. When you have to put together a game plan and you have to be the one that's calling plays and kind of steering the ship, you don't have time to necessarily focus on the other areas within your program. can't spend as much time with the defensive side. You can't spend as much time with special teams. You can't spend as much time recruiting during the season. You can't spend as much time with the NIL, the port, whatever else that goes into being a head coach in college football. It takes a lot of that time away from it because putting together a game plan and getting yourself to a point to call plays takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of energy. And I think that it was proven that, yes, that might be what Ryan would rather do because I think Ryan is a little bit of a control freak at times. I think it's obvious to everybody that he needs somebody, a Matt Patricia of the offense, that can come in, basically put together a game plan. He can trust that a lot of the detail type things are being worked out over the course of the week, and he can go focus on other areas. I also think that Matt Patricia was so much of a home run hire. I still think Ryan Day is going to be very involved in the offensive game plan on a week-to-week basis. So, my first initial reaction, 4 out of 10. Like, all right, whatever, it's okay. I gave it a 4 initially because he was not very good with the Falcons and not very good with the Steelers. But the 2 things I wanted was to go outside and bring in a guy with NFL experience. Check mark one box, check mark the second box. They did that. So I was like, all right, before Art Smith's time with the Falcons and then obviously before the Steelers, I didn't really know a whole lot about him. I didn't even know he was the OC back in 2019 and 2020 for the Titans when they were kind of going on their run with Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and Mike Vrabel, who we see now today after Championship Sunday yesterday is heading back to the Super Bowl this time as a coach. Obviously, he had a really good spurt there that I don't think a lot of people knew about when this news originally dropped, just because it has been so long ago. And some of you could say that's a red flag. Absolutely. That is, like, you would rather his success be more recently than what it was. But as I get further into this, I think it's really going to justify why I think Art Smith is a really good hire. It's not a home run hire. I don't absolutely love it by any means, but I think it's a really good hire. Like I said, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And we're going to kind of look underneath the hood of, like, what has happened with Art Smith and his offenses the past few years. So, after I had some time to dig in a little bit, I think it is very fair to say that when Ohio State hires a coach, you kind of want to pull more of the good periods on their resume than the bad. So let me say that again. When Ohio State hires a coach for anything, whether that's an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, whatever that might be, I think you always want to highlight the good parts of their resume rather than the bad. Or you want to put a little bit more weight into the good parts of their resume rather than the bad. And the reason I say that is because in over 90% of Ohio State's games, they probably have the talent advantage. So if you're a guy that can at least come in and get the scheme and the X's and O's right, you're already a hell of a lot further or jump ahead than your competition because you have the edge on the X's and O's side, and then you just have straight up better players at the end of the day. I mean, you look back the past few years, like the only teams that necessarily are talent equated or similar in terms of just the type of guys that they got versus what we got is usually in the postseason when you're playing like your Oregons, your Miamis, your Indianas. I mean, even Indiana, like they weren't a talent advantage with anybody, but obviously they're a good squad with a lot of experience and yada, yada, yada. We've all gotten into that conversation before. You played Notre Dame a lot the past few years. Notre Dame has been and always has recruited at a really high level. So you look at some of those opponents that are out there the last couple years, those are usually the games that the talent gap is closer. I would say I think Ohio State typically still has the talent advantage in those games, but the story is still to be told. When you consider a coach Ohio State hires, I will always weigh in a little bit more of the good of their resumes than the bad just because of that talent advantage that they have. So let's back all the way up. Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator in 2019 and 2020 in Tennessee. In 2019, the Tennessee Titans had a top 10 offense. In 2020, the Tennessee Titans had a top 5 offense. They led the NFL in explosive plays. And what were we saying this entire year with Ohio State? They need more explosive plays. They don't hit anybody with enough right hook, left hook type of plays that kind of just flip a drive, flip field position, anything like that. It was kind of like slow, methodical, 5 to 10 play yards per play as kind of how they went about things this year. So I really liked seeing that they led the league in the explosive plays at that point in time. So Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback, nobody is sitting here acting like Ryan Tannehill is any world beater by any means. If you are, please let me know in the comments if you ever have thought that Ryan Tannehill is potentially a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the NFL at any part of his career. Whether that was in Miami, whether that was whenever he was with Tennessee, at any part of his career, did you think that Ryan Tannehill was one of the dudes in the NFL? I never have. I think at best his ceiling has been like a top 12, top 15 quarterback, probably more around that 15 area on a consistent year-to-year basis. So let's look at his 2 seasons. In 2019, Ryan Tannehill, he was hurt for part of the year, so I believe it was Marcus Mariota that had to play a good chunk of the season as well. I can't remember if that was the start of the year, can't remember if that was the finish of the year. Doesn't really matter. But when Ryan Tannehill played, he threw for 2,700 yards, which, whatever, that's just due to lack of games. But 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's a solid campaign for a quarterback that's a middle-of-the-road quarterback. He is hurt for part of the year. That's a good season. And then to follow that up with even better season, a phenomenal season in 2020, 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Absolute home run. Probably Ryan Tannehill, if it's not his best season, I'm sure it is in the top 2, maybe top 3 of his career. But Arthur Smith was the one putting together those game plans, calling those plays for that offense that Ryan Tannehill was so successful in. And the reason why I'm highlighting Ryan Tannehill a little bit more than Derrick Henry, because everybody knows what Derrick Henry did. You can see here in the graphics, the year that Tannehill damn near threw for 4,000 yards, he rushed for 2,000. The offense was really fucking good. And in 2019, I think he still rushed for 1,500 yards. And, yeah, people are going to point to the fact, well, we had Derrick Henry. That is absolutely true. Derrick Henry is probably one of the best running backs to ever touch a football field in the National Football League. But the point still remains, you still need really good offensive line play. You still need a really good run scheme in order to be successful. Like, yeah, you can probably, to an extent, just turn around and hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and he's just so big, so fast, so strong, he's probably going to go get you a few yards, no matter what the blocking looks like up front. But it still matters at the end of the day. You're not going to go rush for 2,000 yards with poor run scheme, poor blocking up front. And that is Art Smith's run scheme. That is Art Smith's offense. That is Art Smith calling the plays. I think that Derrick Henry, I think what Art Smith makes me most excited about coming to Ohio State, it's not necessarily the fact that, what he did with Ryan Tannehill. He's walking into Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sand, and he's walking into Ryan Day's passing offense that historically has been very, 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 very good. Ryan Day has had 4 quarterbacks go to the Heisman be a Heisman finalist up to this point. So I'm not worried about that at all. He's getting probably a better quarterback in terms of how Julian Sand compares to the competition of college football than what Ryan Tannehill did compared to the rest of the NFL quarterbacks or the league or in his competition whenever he was playing in 2019 and 2020. And on the flip side of that, A.J. Brown was a rookie in 2019. He was in his second year in 2020, and he had over 1,000 yards in each of those 2 seasons. So if you're still worried that all he can do is turn around and hand it off, he doesn't really know how to utilize a good quarterback and a good receiver, well, it's right here. The facts are right here on screen to you. Ryan Tannehill probably played some of his best ball under Art Smith, and A.J. Brown was a rookie and in his second year and had 1,000 yards each of the 2 years. And I would hope with the success of the run game that Derrick Henry and that offense had during that 2-year span as well, you would hope that he brings some kind of success from that to Columbus and really improves the run game. because I think that is the most important thing when I look at an offensive standpoint that they have to improve. Now, I'm going to get into some things that I don't really like about Art Smith and why I only gave it a 7.5 versus like an 8, 9, or a 10. But I think if they're looking at pros and what is positive about Art Smith, I think that you're going to see an improvement in the run game, and that is something Ohio State desperately needs. When you look at Ryan Day's best teams, probably 2019, 2024, they had a really solid run game. And this past year, it was probably average at best. You had a true freshman running back who showed some flashes. Bo Jackson rushed for over 1,000 yards, had a really solid freshman campaign. But you were never able to run the ball consistently enough and kind of screwed yourself in the long run if you're going to play the slow-pace offense when you're living in 2nd and 8, 3rd and 9, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and you're facing the pass rushes of Indiana and Miami. If you look at both of Indiana and Miami, they were able to run the ball. That's why they were in the spot they were in. They weren't in the national championship because of their really good receivers or their really good quarterback. Like, yeah, those guys made plays. Malachi Toney made plenty of plays. Elijah Surratt, Becker, Mendoza, Beck. They all stepped up, made throws, made plays with their feet when they absolutely had to. But at the end of the day, what they could do most consistently was they could turn around and they could run the ball whenever they wanted. They could get into 2nd and 6, 3rd and 3. That's what allowed them to be so successful on offense, and Ohio State has to find a way to get back to that success in the run game. And I think Art Smith is going to bring a lot of value to his run fits, run schemes, and getting Ohio State into a much better spot than what they were a year ago. So after his time in Tennessee, Art Smith hit a pretty rough period, let's just be honest. And I think this is why a lot of people aren't big fans of him being hired as Ohio State's offensive coordinator. One sec, got to take a cup of coffee. Very early. Like I said, if you're just now tuning in, I am trying something different. I'm going to record these a little bit in advance and then go live later after the fact and then just play the recordings. I'm hoping the sound quality in that on X is a little bit better than what it's been in the past. Not that it's been bad, but I don't know. Just messing around with it, I think there could be a little bit of value there. So as Art Smith, in 2021, hired as Atlanta Falcons head coach, his quarterback that year was 36-year-old Matt Ryan, who still threw for 3,968 yards. He was 32 yards away from throwing for 4K as a 36-year-old quarterback. That was year one of Arthur Smith being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Year one, you have a washed-up Matt Ryan, and he damn near goes for 4,000 yards. So still, not bad. I think they were like 7-10 that year. Not ideal in terms of just being a head coach, but we're not asking him to be a head coach here. We're asking him to run the offense. We're not asking him to come in and play Ryan Day's role. We just need him to be able to instill enough trust in Ryan Day that he can run the offense and Ryan Day can go focus on the other shit. So, 2021, solid year. And this is really where things started to go off the rails in 2022. And they were not good. Let me just put it this way. 2022, his quarterback with the Atlanta Falcons was Marcus Mariota. Dog shit. In 2023, he was basically coaching for his job that entire year. I still remember the whispers. I still remember the memes all over social media. His quarterback was Desmond Ridder. Even more dog shit. Horrible. So at this point, gets fired. Steelers hire him as the offensive coordinator. And what did the Steelers hand him as his quarterback? Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. If any of you have paid any attention the past couple years, those guys have been bad for a little bit now. And then this year, probably his best season outside of 2021, his first year in Atlanta, when 36-year-old Matt Ryan threw for 3,968 yards, he had a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. So after his time in Tennessee, he had a washed-up Matt Ryan, who still basically threw for 4,000 yards. He had a dog shit Marcus Mariota. He had a mega dog shit Desmond Ridder. He had washed up douchebag, thinks he's all lit, Russell Wilson. And he has dog shit, can't throw the football, Justin Fields. In his last year, he has handed 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who still honestly had a pretty good year. I think I looked it up. He had like 3,300 yards, 27 touchdowns, and like maybe 7 interceptions. Those numbers might not be completely correct, but it was something very close into that neighborhood. So his entire time, he's had Ryan Tannehill, washed up Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, washed up Russell Wilson, dog shit Justin Fields, and 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. His last 7 seasons, 6 or 7 seasons of calling plays or being a head coach, running the offense basically, he has had poor quarterback play. And I think you could make a strong argument that he did a lot with what he was given to get the production out of 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, 36-year-old Matt Ryan, middle of the road, definition of middle of the road Ryan Tannehill. It's very impressive. He's coming to Ohio State with a quarterback that was just a Heisman finalist. He had the highest completion percentage in college football history. So if you think that you're going to see a lot of the same methodical type of offenses that you saw when he had some of these guys under center, I think there's a reason to believe we're going to see a much better version of an Art Smith offense solely because he has Julian Sand under center. Julian Sand is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Like I just said, he just set the college football record for completion percentage. That gives you reason to be excited. He has never had a receiver the caliber of Jeremiah Smith on his team. And don't be coming at me right now for like, oh, you think that Jeremiah Smith's better than DK Metcalf, or you think he's better than A.J. Brown or whoever he had. Maybe Drake London was probably in there at one point. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is Jeremiah Smith against the competition they're going to play is better than what DK Metcalf, Drake London, and A.J. Brown. The gap is significantly more with Jeremiah Smith against college production than those 3 guys against NFL production. So those are 2 reasons right there. 3 reasons. Going to improve the run game. He's getting a much better quarterback than what he's had. The one that has a college football history for completion percentage and probably the best receiver or one of the best college wide receivers we have ever seen. You're bringing in a guy who has a ton of NFL experience. He's called plays. He's been a head coach in the NFL. And you're asking him to go down to college football. I think it's going to be okay. So I've done nothing but sat here and talked about how awesome Arthur Smith Jr. is. Now, let's get into the things that create a red flag. Because as you probably have sat there and listened to me, you're probably like, how is he giving him a 7.5 out of 10? He's glazing the fuck out of Art Smith right now. How is this not a 10 out of 10? Well, let me tell you. There is a narrative that is out there that he did struggle getting balls to his best players. Now, his time in Tennessee, that was not the case. A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry had phenomenal seasons under Art Smith Jr. But I think during his time in Atlanta, and I think a little bit in Pittsburgh, he wasn't always getting Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and maybe even Drake London if you throw him into there. Not always getting them the football. So, yes. Put a little bit of a red flag there. Like, Art, if you're going to come to Ohio State, we have really good players, and you need to get them the fucking ball. If you're sitting here giving Will Cracker Marak 6 to 8 targets a game while Jeremiah Smith is getting 3 to 4 targets a game, that's a great recipe for you to get ran the fuck out of Columbus by game 6. Because let me tell you, we are loud when we don't like something. And if that's the approach you're going to come out with, of not trying to get number 4 the ball, this whole relationship, it's not going to last long. Number 2, he is historically known for playing a lot of 13 and 14 personnel. Breathe. I know. I don't like it either. I don't like the fact that he really loves 13 and 14 personnel because Ohio State did it a little too much this past year. And when the offense stalled, I think a lot of it could point into that. If you got a couple more of your receivers out there on the field, that's your advantage. That's why you're good. That's why teams fear you. Not because of your tight end sets, because of your speed and your space and your talent at receiver. Why are you going to run 13 and 14 personnel? That's an area of concern. Now, I think Ryan Day has a vision not only for this offense, but I think just for like Ohio State football in and of its entirety. I think that he views Ohio State football and his goal is to kind of make Ohio State football program be a mini NFL factory. Now you brought the NFL, you can get basically, or not the NFL, now you got the NIL. You basically have the transfer portal. You have free agency every single year. So he can go in and pay players. He can go in and grab whatever player he wants now. And how he's going to try to sell guys is we have an NFL program here. I came from the NFL. I have a Matt Patricia who's won multiple Super Bowls here in the NFL. I have Art Smith, who is an OC and a head coach in the NFL. I have O.G. Walt, who was in the NFL. You have a lot of these track records or these guys that have an NFL background and NFL experience. In the NFL, you see a lot of 13 and 14 personnel. I do not love it. I cannot lie. I do not like it. It's probably when I look at my list of, I have 4 points here of list of cons or negatives with Art Smith. And that is 100% the one that scares me the most. I do not love 13 and 14 personnel, and I know you do not either. It's terrible to watch. Ohio State has never been, except for maybe the Jim Tressel days, 20 years ago. They've never been a 13 to 14 personnel team. So that is the one thing. I'm fine with 13. I'm not fine with 13 personnel. I hate 14. First off, fuck 14. If you're ever taking Jeremiah Smith off the field, you need fired immediately. 13 personnel, not a fan. I think 12 personnel is where I would like to draw the line. But obviously, I am not an offensive guru. I've never called plays. I've never put the game plan together. I've never even fucking coached football. What the fuck do I know? But what history is telling us, and especially what we have seen this past year, slow, methodical, 13, 14 personnel packages were ultimately the killer of Ohio State at the end of the day. So yes, that does bring up concern. That is something we should be worried about as Ohio State fans. Hey man, your thing is to do the thing that kind of killed us at the end of the day this past year. And your thing is playing a lot of tight end sets and playing really fucking slow. We've done nothing but since the Miami and the Indiana game. Scream. Why are we playing so slow? Why are we playing with so many tight ends on the field? Area for concern. Another point I had. There are shorter periods of success compared to Chip Kelly and Matt Patricia. I don't think that you can necessarily compare this hire to Matt Patricia. So if I was going to rank those 3 hires the past few years, Matt Patricia, Chip Kelly, Art Smith, I'm ranking them in that order. Number 1 hire, Matt Patricia. You will never, ever, ever, Ohio State will never be in the opportunity to hire a defensive coordinator who coached for Bill Belichick, potentially maybe one of the best NFL coaches or the best NFL coach of all time, who was his defensive coordinator. He trusted him for a very long time to call the shots, put together the game plans, do everything it was on the defensive side of the ball, and he won a few Super Bowls. You're never going to see that again. Ohio State will never have that opportunity to hire a Super Bowl winning offensive or defensive coordinator. A multi-year Super Bowl winning. Number 2, Chip Kelly. Had a lot of success in the NFL. Had a lot of success in college. There were a lot more periods of success with Chip Kelly than there were Art Smith. And then number 3, Art Smith. I think you saw his time in Tennessee. That was very good. I think his first year, the offense was fine in Atlanta. But basically, since 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, not a whole lot to be excited about. But when you peel back the curtain, you look under the hood, you look into who the quarterback was for his teams, you look into maybe who some of the playmakers were on his teams at times, you kind of understand why the offense wasn't as great. And then lastly, he had Derrick Henry. Now, I never like to knock a coach for just being like, well, they had that guy. Well, you know what they had to do to get that guy the ball? They had to call really good plays. They had to scheme shit up. They had to put together really good game plans. Yes, it makes it easier. That's what makes being a coach even easier, is you have really good players that can go out and perform like that. But that's the point. Ohio State has those really good players. They're much better than most times of their competition. So when I factor in all these things of the pros, Ryan Day can now be the CEO. He went outside, found a guy with NFL experience who has had success being an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And like I said, when Ohio State hires a coach, I always consider the good periods of the resume compared to their bad, just because of Ohio State's talent advantages and the other coaches Ohio State have on staff are typically better than what the other guys got. That being said, I'm giving this a 7.5 out of 10 higher. It's not the 10 out of 10 of Matt Patricia or what Brian Dable would have been or what Cliff Kingsbury would have been. And it's not a 0 out of 10 like I would have given Keenan Bailey and Tyler Bowen. I think it's a really good hire. NFL guy, NFL experience, had success in the NFL. At times, I think he did more with less in terms of who his quarterbacks were at the time. And it allows Ryan Day to be a CEO. So before we get up on out of here, I'm starting kind of this new trend, I guess you could say, or this new apologize, I keep coughing. I'm drinking some coffee and it's kind of giving me a little tickle in my throat. But I called it like a new, just like X mailbag. Like basically just taking screenshots of people's tweets on X and kind of just like talking through them. So let's just get right into it. This first one from Kyle Lamb. I think he used to do some reporting for Ohio State. From what I've gathered, I think he lives down in Florida now. He was posting some, I think, weather the other day and was showing where it's all like 0 degrees up here by us in Ohio and up north, and it's like 85 where he's at. So he's living a lot better life than all of us are right now, all of us that live up north at least. Anyways, Kyle Lamb, I think he was a reporter for Ohio State. He's done some things with Chris Drew. Very well spoken, has very good opinions, kind of knows his shit on X. He said, Ryan Day isn't asking Arthur Smith to come in and run an Arthur Smith offense. He's asking Smith to come in and run the Ohio State offense, incorporating some of Day's own passing schemes and improve the run game. He's excellent with 12 to 13 personnel, motion, play action, etc. Having an experienced NFL coordinator that has had very good success running the ball in the NFL will help Ohio State with its run game and help improve the red zone offense. Day isn't looking for an overhaul. He's trying to improve on the things that they botched last year. Agree 1,000%. And I think the part that I really like part of that is he notes how good the run game has been, how he's going to improve it, and how he's excellent with 12 and 13 personnel. As much as what we hate it, and I go back to the point is I think Ryan Day is building kind of an NFL factory or an NFL program here at Ohio State. And you look in the NFL, they're not going 5 or 4 or 5 wide spread with receivers all the time. It's a lot of tight end sets. That's how you run the ball. That's how you get creative in the run game. That's how you add some protection when you need it. That's how you get play action really involved. I think that's really what Ryan Day is trying to do. As much as what we hate it, as much as what it leaves a bad taste in our mouth, he's trying to make this an NFL program out of Ohio State with NFL offenses, NFL defenses, NFL coaches, and that's what he's trying to do here. And the last part, he's had very good success running the ball in the NFL. Will help Ohio State's run game and help improve the red zone offense. The red zone offense killed Ohio State this past year. And when you have a kicker like Jaden Fielding, you feel even more left-handed. The best red zone offense is the offense that can just turn around and run the ball for 4 or 5 yards. And if he can come in and improve that run game, give Ohio State a little bit of edge in that area, Julian Sand's going to be better. Jeremiah Smith's going to be better. Brandon Ennis is going to be better. Chris Henry Jr. is going to be better. The guy from UTSA is going to be better. The guy from LSU is going to be better. Bo Jackson's going to be better. Isaiah West is going to be better. The Jacoby Harris, I think maybe I botched his name. Maybe it's not right. The guy from Florida is going to be better. The offensive line is going to be better. So if he can come in and establish a run game, and if that looks to 12 or 13 personnel, that's fine. They couldn't run the ball very well this year. They could run the ball pretty well. They could run the ball pretty well against bad teams, but they could not do it when it came time to play the Indianas and the Miamis of the world. And to be an effective football team and to be able to beat those really good teams, you have to be able to run the ball. On to the next one from our guy Dylan DG. He's kind of hated this hire on the timeline, and I completely understand the points that he's trying to make. He's kind of looking at more of Art Smith's negative times during his resume, and I understand the part where he's like Art Smith's best years are probably like 5 years ago, which is absolutely very true. But I guess the difference between DG and what I'm looking at is I go back to when I look at a hire or somebody that Ohio State goes out and gets, I always consider the good parts of their resume, because the good parts at the end of the day are what's most has a better probability or a better likelihood of translating to Ohio State, because you have that talent advantage at Ohio State that you don't always have in the NFL. So DG said, we need to stop comparing Art Smith to Chip Kelly and Matt Patricia. There was evidence of Chip Kelly's success at multiple stops over 15 years. Oregon, some years in Philly, UCLA. High levels of success. He took Darren Thomas to the national title game, was winning 9 games a year with UCLA prior to Ohio State. Matt Patricia, DCing multiple Super Bowls, having the league's best defense in 2016. High level of success despite failing as a head coach. You were wish casting with Arthur Smith, hoping to see something that hasn't been done with him. High level of success. And enough about his years with Mike Vrabel 7 years ago. If Mike Vrabel believed with the schematic guru, he would have hired him for New England. There has been no evidence of high-level success with Arthur Smith, middle tier of success at best. So let's unpack this. The parts about Chip Kelly and Matt Patricia, absolutely. A little bit ago, I just ranked those hires. I made Matt Patricia as number 1. He's a DC multi-winning year Super Bowl defensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator for arguably the best coach in the NFL in NFL history. Chip Kelly had multiple stops of having success. Philly, UCLA, Oregon. So that's why I ranked Arthur Smith below both of those two. It is not the level of hire of what both of those hires were. Matt Patricia I would call like a 10 out of 10. Chip Kelly was probably like a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. So you go down to this part about Arthur Smith. You were wish casting with Arthur Smith, hoping to see something that hasn't been done with him. High level of success. I disagree with that in a sense. If you look at his years in 2019 and 2020, high level of success would be having a top 10 offense in 2019, having a top 5 offense in 2020. And you point to, well, they had Derrick Henry. But then I just show you what Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown was in his first and second year. I point to you what they did during those times as well. I don't think that you can say that he has had middle-level success at best. He had some of the best offenses in the best league at the game of football. All right, to go on a little bit more. And enough about his years with Mike Vrabel of 7 years. If Mike Vrabel believed he was a schematic guru, he would have hired him for New England. Mike Vrabel has Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels is every head coach in the NFL's number one OC choice. If you even watched the game yesterday, Tony Romo was talking about how Josh McDaniels is widely known as probably one of the, if not the best offensive coordinator in the NFL the last 20 years. I don't think that that's any knock whatsoever on Art Smith. Art Smith was phenomenal under Mike Vrabel, and if you're Mike Vrabel, who knows what direction he could have gone if it's not Josh McDaniels. If it's not Josh McDaniels, maybe he does call Art Smith. Maybe he does go to New England with him. But to say that that's a red flag, like Josh McDaniels would have been a Matt Patricia level hire. It would have basically been like going out and getting Matt Patricia to be Ohio State's offensive coordinator. Like I said, we're never seeing anything like that ever again. You are never going to see Ohio State hire a multi-year Super Bowl winning coordinator. Never going to happen again. Impossible. And that's what Josh McDaniels would have done. If you're Mike Vrabel, you're 100% taking Josh McDaniels over Art Smith any fucking day. So I agree with the part on Chip Kelly. I agree with the part on Matt Patricia. And that's why I made Patricia 1, Chip Kelly 2, Art Smith 3. But the two parts I disagree with is you haven't seen him do anything with high level of success. Is it only 2 years? Yes. Would I like him to have a little bit more success outside of just a couple years? Absolutely. But to say that Mike Vrabel didn't want him, that he didn't bring him with Cleveland, to Cleveland with him, let's dig in and look into that a little bit. Josh McDaniels is a much better OC than what Art Smith is. All right, and our last one. This one's coming from J-Book. J-Book, people saying Arthur Smith is a terrible hire for Ohio State. They just had Brian Hartline calling plays who had zero experience. Smith's experience alone and the ability to, at minimum, sequence plays is an instant upgrade over an OC who never called plays. Agree 1,000%. I don't even know if Brian Hartline was really doing much of anything in terms of play calling this past year or the 2 years that he was Ohio State's OC. I don't know if Brian Hartline was a good offensive coordinator at all. The 2 years that he was the offensive coordinator, the first year, we know Ryan Day took it back over. And the second year, we're all pretty sure Ryan Day took it back over. And by the end of it, he wasn't even calling the plays because he took the USF job. And to get into a little bit, Art Smith has had years and years of experience in the NFL, being a head coach, being an offensive coordinator, and like he has the experience to sequence plays. To having a guy who has been competed, called plays, put together game plans at the highest level of football in the NFL, that's always an upgrade over a guy calling plays for the first time and who happened to just take his first head coaching job. We don't know if Brian Hartline is much better than just a A++++++ recruiter and developer at this point in time. I think that he can definitely eventually get to be an OC, a good play caller, and maybe a head coach is a little bit more of his calling. A head coach, you don't necessarily need to be a wizard in terms of X's and O's. You need to be a leader. You need to be a culture setter. And you need to have the ability to make good hires, fundraise money, and recruit. If you are lacking a little bit on the X's and O's sides of calling plays and being an offensive coordinator, but you can hit on all the other areas, you're still going to be pretty damn good. You're still going to be really damn good. And I think that this is 100% spot on from J-Book. Brian Hartline, first time calling plays. We have no idea if he was good at it, if he was even doing it for a majority of the time. And we are bringing in a guy who we know has done it, can do it, has had periods of success. All right. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, Art Smith, really like it. Don't love it. Not a home run hire, but I think it's a really, 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 really good hire And Ohio State's offensive coordinator spot is in a better spot today than what it was this past season. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. He has a track record of having success. There is some question marks on his resume. But like I've said many times, multiple times this episode, when Ohio State makes a hire, I always consider the good parts of their resume over the bad parts, because at Ohio State, you're going to have the talent advantage 9 times out of 10. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate everybody getting back on here. Got my new power cord. Everything went very well. Probably get this posted and go live with it at some point later today. Till then, please be safe. Stay warm. Go snow blow that drift out of your driveway. Don't let it linger. The more it's cold, the longer it lingers, the harder it's going to be, and the more it's going to suck. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. The Middle Ground out.